Hi, everyone. Can see lots of faces. This is great. All right, I'll just start off. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to kick things off with an acknowledgement for country. The 2020 National Seafood Industry Leadership Program 2020 Port Lincoln cohort respectfully acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay respect to their elders past and present and emerging. And extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples here today. For myself, I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I'd like to now extend an invitation to the room to tell us the land that you're calling in from by dropping a comment in the chat, in the Zoom chat. Thanks. So hello, my name's Natalie and I am the chair for this event. This is the 2020 Port Lincoln cohort for the National Seafood Industry Leadership Program, and you are present here this afternoon to launch the launch of our vision, mission and strategies. It has been an arduous 2 long years to get to this point, and we are sincerely grateful that you are here with us this afternoon. So thank you to you all. I'd like to shout out a specific thanks to Austral as our program sponsor and to the FRDC as the program funder. Please note that this event is going to be recorded. If you are uncomfortable with this, please feel free to turn off your camera and de-identify your name. The recording is going to be available and will be uploaded to the Effectors Facebook page. So 3 little bits of housekeeping, virtual housekeeping. First, I'd just like to ask you all to please keep yourselves on mute while people are talking. Second, if you do need to step away, please turn off your camera and your microphone. And lastly, I'd also like to ask everybody in the room, when listening to presentations, to set their viewing options to the side-by-side speaker function. This will allow you to see both the speaker and the presentation slides. I'm going to drop some instructions on how to do that into the chat. And just a note, you'll only be able to use this function when the presentations are up. So I'll just quickly drop that in there now. So, and I will also now introduce the group. So to start off with, I'll introduce myself. My name is Natalie. I am from Melbourne and I work for Atlantis Fisheries Consulting Group. Next, we have Patrick Cavalli. He's from WA, from the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development. Next, we have Daniel Chen, also from WA. He's from the Geraldton's Fishermen's Cooperative.
Hello, everyone.
Next, there's Luke Cordwell from Tasmania, from Tassal.
Hi, everyone.
Next up, we've got Megan Dodd from Queensland, from Intuitive Food Solutions.
Hello.
Sean Larby from Tasmania. He's a commercial abalone diver.
G'day.
Jamie McAllister, also from Tasmania. He's from IMAS.
Hi, everyone.
Cassie Pert from Canberra, from the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment.
Hi, everyone.
Anthony Tennant from Southern Fish Marine.
Hi, everyone.
Darcy Wallace from Canberra, from AFMA.
Hi.
Ratna Adams from Port Lincoln and Dinko Tuna.
Hello.
And last but not least, Sally Bolton from New South Wales, from the Marine Stewardship Council.
Hi, everyone.
So just a quick schedule. We're going to start things off with a presentation from Darcy, who is going to introduce to you our vision, mission and strategies. Then the group will then present their projects and their leadership stories to you all. Cassie is then going to provide us with a summary, and finally Anthony will host our Q&A segment for the event. Please feel free to use the Zoom chat function. We would love to see your comments or any questions that you may have. I'll be taking notes of any of the questions that pop up in the comments so I can give them to Anthony to refer back to at the end. So to kick things off, I'm going to pass the mic over to Darcy, who's going to introduce our vision and mission and strategies. Thanks, Darcy.
Can everyone see the screen? Thanks, Nat. As Nat mentioned, I'm Darcy Wallace from the Australian Fisheries Management Authority, and I'll be giving an overview of our vision and our mission. Before I get to that, I'd first like to mention our very unique NSILP journey. The initial 7-month program has stretched out to nearly 2 years, and the world is a very different place now compared to March 2020. And like the seafood industry, our cohort has had to adapt to this ever-changing world. While it has been nearly 2 years, it has been a necessity for all of us to step back from the NSILP program at different periods, either due to our own personal challenges or the broader uncertainty about the future of the NSILP program. And I'd also like to acknowledge the 6 members of our group that needed to leave our cohort and the program over the last couple of years due to changing priorities and personal circumstances. There have been challenges and rapid changes with the impacts felt by all, although the individual experiences that we've had have been vastly different. And like our own personal and professional journeys, our vision and mission has also gone through an evolution over time. Our initial vision in Port Lincoln was all aboard with Australian seafood, with the aim of uniting the broader community behind the seafood industry. And we promised we came out with this ourselves and didn't poach it from the northern prawn industry, who came out with a similar campaign very soon after our first residential. However, this evolved by our second residential to take account of COVID, and it became. Our vision is a thriving Australian seafood community in a changing world. And our mission is fostering resilience and connections amongst the Australian seafood communities. I'll just give you a bit of context on our final vision and mission. As you all know, the Australian seafood community is made up of a broad range of stakeholder groups, from commercial, recreational, and Indigenous fishers to the post-harvest sector and to seafood consumers. The seafood industry has faced and continued to face some wicked problems, with the COVID-19 pandemic being one of the biggest challenges faced. And the pandemic in particular has highlighted the resilience of the industry and how well it can adapt to challenges in the sector. It's also highlighted the importance of these sectors throughout Australia, with a significant increase in demand for Australian seafood products. And while the seafood community has demonstrated again and again its ability to adapt to changing circumstances, we felt that it was really important to foster the resilience within the community, as there will always be a new challenge to overcome. We felt that while there are great connections within and between the sectors already, that increasing these connections would actually allow the industry to work together and share the load to face the current and future challenges from climate change, misinformation, social license, and of course, the continued impacts of the pandemic. Like our vision and mission, our projects have evolved over time, and we felt the recent pandemic demonstrated the innovation from so many of our seafood sectors to connect directly with Australian consumers to counter the challenges associated with the disruption that COVID has caused. Our 3 strategies are: understanding the perceptions or misperceptions within and between the seafood industry sectors, establishing a connection between the public and consumers and the seafood industry through the telling of their stories, and exploring the use of smartphone apps amongst the seafood community, highlighting opportunities and barriers to the app usage. I'll now hand back over to Nat. Thank you.
Thanks, Darcy. We're now going to begin the group presentations, and this begins with me. So I'm going to introduce my group. My group is Patrick Cavalli, Ratna Adams, and Megan Dodd. I'm going to begin by setting the scene for the last 2 years of this project. Patrick is going to explain the evolution of our group and the project, as well as the rationale. Ratna will explain what we did and the outcomes, and lastly, Megan will discuss our leadership journey for us all. So the story of our group, and as participants of the National Seafood Industry Leadership Program Port Lincoln cohort, goes for 2 years, 1.5 years longer than intended. COVID was just a news story when we were in Port Lincoln getting to know one another, and little did we know that it was going to change our lives so drastically. The reality of life has been different for the four of us. For Pat in WA, it was shut off and isolated from the rest of the country, though for the most part, they maintained a relatively normal day-to-day life. For Ratna and Megan, South Australia and Queensland, sitting sort of in the middle of that impact scale, seeing momentary restrictions and snap lockdowns, though relatively short. And then on the other hand, there's Victorians such as myself experienced the worst of the impact of restrictions and lockdowns. So for me, I endured 263 days in lockdown, plus 26 days of self-quarantine, and then days outside of either quarantine or lockdown where you just don't go out much because of fear. I was resigned to my cozy 65 metre square, 2-bedroom apartment alone with no outside space. Banana bread was my baking hobby of choice. I subscribed to 6 streaming services. I rearranged my bedroom and lounge rooms twice just to mix things up a bit. And finally, I'm going to show you this here. These are all the books I read. Sorry about that, that was my drink bottle. These are all of the books I read, or most of them, in order of early lockdown up here, which are smart, funny, there's a bit of current events, there's a reread classic, all of which I would recommend. And then these 5 down the bottom, which have embarrassing title number 1 through 5. This was a sign of my mental condition. This was the crap fantasy fiction, and it was all my mind could tolerate. This was escapism from a world far different to the one that I was living in. But collectively, we all had to endure border closures, limits to travel within our home state, and working from home conditions. Doubt swirled around whether our program would continue or whether we would be able to continue if it did. And this all affected our ability to connect. So over time, the online dimension became a place of dread, and it was becoming detrimental. We were moving along in our personal lives and our professional lives. The vision and mission that we'd come up with had diminished its significance, and so did the program. We were going to miss out on Canberra, and as such, we were going to miss out on a more personal connection that we all signed up for. But the circumstances are out of our control, and Jill, Heidi, and Virginia have stood by us and been there by our side the whole way, and we are so very grateful. We still believe in this program, and we persevered, and on reflection, we are now probably more resilient and adaptable than we were before. But the threat of possible future lockdowns and restrictions is still very real, and so levels of anxiety and other mental conditions are still high. I can speak for myself. The seafood sector's pre-COVID mental health story was that levels of psychological distress is significantly high, almost double those reported by the public and higher than those in other primary producing industries. We don't know yet what the short and long-term mental health effects of the past 2 years has had and is still having. And I'd say we, like our group, and our individual and collective experience is a microcosm for the wider seafood sector. Because of our experience, though, we still believe in our vision and mission more than ever, and resilience and connection are vital to achieve a thriving Australian seafood community. So Patrick is now going to take us back to the beginning and explain our group's project, Evolution, and the rationale. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Nat, for sharing your amazing personal story, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm now going to walk you all through the background and concept behind our project, casting a light on blind spots. At Residential 1 in February 2020, as a cohort, we settled on 5 excellent strategies that all focused on innovative communication solutions to get messages out there and achieve our vision, to get everyone on board with Australian seafood. We wanted the community to connect with our seafood sector better, to own it and be proud of it. Our group at the time, myself, Ratna Adams, and Bianca Dubber's original strategy was to develop a shiny communication plan that would tie all these strategies together and make them cohesive and useful for industry as a package into the future. Jill said it was boring, and she was right, but we didn't care. When we left Port Lincoln, we barely used WhatsApp across the group Teams was bounced around as something fancy by very few, and Zoom was nowhere to be suggested. So we weren't sure how we were going to do it, but we had some innovative ways about connecting before the next residency. But we all know what happened next. One of my favourite things that happened throughout this course was actually during our first lockdown in April 2020. We all received T-shirts in the mail from Anthony Tennant with our slogan, "All aboard with Australian seafood." This drove home how connected we all were and behind our direction, even though we would still argue on how to word the mission exactly. Fast forward to May 2021, 15 months later, finding out residential 2 was going to go ahead, we had lost a third of our group. So through necessity and in preparation for residential 2, 5 groups changed to 3, projects changed and members moved around. Our project was no longer relevant and we needed to pivot, deciding to conduct a survey of stakeholders instead. Still a bit boring, but we thought this could be used to build understanding of how to get people on board with Australian seafood and help achieve our vision and mission. With Bianca moving on, Nat Manahan and Megan Dodd joined Ratna and I to hatch a plan for how we could rebuild our strategy into something meaningful in a vastly different world. Building on the survey idea, we decided that one of the key barriers to the seafood community being able to cohesively connect with the broader community were some of the unconscious biases that exist between and across sectors that access aquatic resources. So we thought we could cast a light on these blind spots. Our project aimed to identify misperceptions and unconscious bias between different stakeholder groups regarding Australian fish resources and associated seafood industries. These identifications could then be used to tease out target areas for engagement and information sharing with different stakeholder groups, or more realistically, lead to more in-depth research in the area to achieve the ultimate goal of developing grassroots community support and understanding of Australia's seafood industry, which we believe is world-class. To do this, we first needed to settle on our stakeholder groups, which was challenging because there are many ways to break something so large down, and we all had different views about scale. In the end, we settled on 3 broad groups: Indigenous, recreational, and commercial fishing stakeholders. Our group then developed our hypotheses for the common perceptions and issues we thought each group may have with the other to form the basis for drafting our targeted survey questions. Some of these included the views around what each sector was catching, favoritism specific sectors might be having with decision makers, how the community may view them, where landed product ends up. There's not enough local product. It's all going overseas. Sustainability of fishing activity or lack thereof, the role of third-party certification providers. We would then use these to settle the questions, execute the surveys, and analyse the results. But first, we needed to put this methodology and concept together and seek expert advice on what was, with hindsight, a pretty big task. We decided to seek feedback from a group of national leaders in social sciences, using our draft project concept and high-level perceptions in subsequent questions. Seeking expert advice was to be our first task upon return from residential 2. Unfortunately, during residential 2, the pandemic broke out again, literally during the course, to the point some of our group could not return home and others just made it in time before borders shut. Suffice to say, we didn't know what was going to happen next regarding the program or life. Ratna Adams will now tell you about how we pushed on through the next stages of the project.
Thanks, Pat. After the end of the Gold Coast residential back in May 2021, we got together online and started the project by identifying the experts that we want to have discussion with. The first one is Kate Barclay, who is Professor of International Study and Global Societies at University of Technology, Sydney. Her interest is the social aspects of fisheries, aquaculture, and marine conservation. Next is Kate Brooks, who is Adjunct Associate Professor at Deakin University. Her interest is marine resource management. The third expert is Tanya King from Deakin University. She is a maritime anthropologist. Her interest focuses on issues relating to natural resource management. Last expert, Emily Ogier. She is a marine social science research fellow at the Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies. She is interested in the human dimension of marine system and the way this interaction is governed through formal institution, markets, and social process. However, just before we talk with the expert, we have found out that FRDC has shared a similar interest with us. One of FRDC list of express of interest is understanding and shaping collaboration within fishing and aquaculture. This seems like putting a brake on us, our project. However, we have decided to keep it going. We have approached the expert, telling them what our mission is, what our vision is, our strategy, which is communication, and what we want to do. The feedback from the expert is quite positive. They like the idea of the sectors that we want to interact with, and that is ambitious project. The experts suggest that we should move away from the online survey and trying some kind of open conversation or interviews instead. Since there are too many online surveys and due to the short time frame, we wouldn't get anything much out of it. The experts have also helped us tailoring some open questions. Due to the short time frame, we have conducted a handful and anonymous interviews with 3 sectors. The following are some key points that we got from our interview with the sector. The interview with the indigenous fisher. What they see as their concern is fishing is not just for food, but it serves many aspects. The activity is the connection to their people, to the country and the nature. Fishing is the sharing of knowledge and learning. They feel that they have given so many interviews, but only little information is known to the public. Next issue is allocation of aquatic resources to indigenous fishers. Indigenous fishers see that the share of aquatic resources that is allocated to them is so little. For example, allocation of abalone quota, approximately 90% of the quota of the allocation goes to commercial sector, and the other 5% go to recreational sector, and only nominal share of that 5% is allocated to indigenous fishing. Some proud group of indigenous fishing see that it is their inherited right to protect and manage the aquatic resources. However, this doesn't align with the quota management all the time. Next slide is I'm gonna point out. I'm give you the key point of the interview with the commercial fishing. Commercial fishing has been perceived by the public that they are overcatching. However, the public is not aware of the existing management plan, and fish stock assessment has been conducted regularly. Also, the limit of catch, also the limit of catch of quota, which control the quantity of the catch. Also, commercial fishers believe that the public will always have negative perception regarding the sustainability. One of the commercial fishers said that they have been criticized of their catching activity and the target species that is endangered, when some studies show the evidence that the stock is recovering strongly and now sustainable. Next is about the key point from the recreational fishers. There is always some clash between recreational fishers and commercial fishers because they share the same catching area. When some areas have become marine sanctuary, the pressure is put on both recreational and commercial fishing, and this can lead to some tension. The fishers say that the fisher believe that the government always favor commercial sector more than recreational fishing. From the interview, we have found out that some key points that what we got from the interview mirror some of our hypotheses, which are the public perception about commercial fisher taking too much fish, and that the government support commercial fishing more than recreational fishing. Lastly, the group would like to thank Kate Barclay, Kate Brooke, Tanya King, and Emily Ogier, who have shared very insightful thoughts and suggestions to us. Also, we would like to thank the anonymous fishers who share some of their information and their experience with us. Now I'm going to hand it to Megan. Thank you.
Sorry, Meg, you're still on mute.
Classic rookie mistake. Okay, at least I've got that one out the way. Let's start again. Thanks, Ratna. With our project development moving from theory to having valuable discussions with relevant industry experts and completing a number of interviews as presented by Patrick and Ratna, we headed into the end of 2021, losing sight of our project and our motivation. The repercussions of this showed in the lack of interactions and communications within the team. We became inactive individuals as our project came to a halt. We were exhausted and burnt out. Clearly here, the curly matches Natalie stuck in the Victorian lockdown cycles, myself and Ratna in no man's land in South Australia and Queensland, leaving Patrick by himself cut off in WA. Our schedules, different states, and the online environment were not conducive of a leadership program, project, or connections to deliver. We had come to an impasse of what next for our project and needed another way to navigate our situation. This impasse, the critical fork in the road of where do we go from here, had a wake-up call with the confirmation the dates for the third residency were not moving and it would be online. Here we started our journey to find our feet again. Firstly, we sat down as a team to get real and ask the hard questions, utilising our open and probing questioning skills, starting with, did each of us individually want to continue? Did we have enough left in the tank to get us through the home stretch? We struggled to make the decision until we could discuss the project and what was involved for delivery, as this would influence our decision. Like any project, the goalposts had changed, and therefore what we could deliver also changed. After brainstorming all options, we chose to evolve our project and present our personal journey for the last 2 years. Consequently, our motivation improved and we recommitted to take the Evolve project to graduation. And to our surprise, here we were subconsciously using the 4D reflection model in practice as part of finding our feet with what happened, how did we feel, what do we know about us as a team, and what we will do now. Okay, so things didn't go as planned. But in terms of a team and developing our leadership skills, we have become stronger working together, improved our communication skills, all whilst supporting and empowering each other. We built our own resilience, our own mini seafood industry community, and unintentionally meeting the vision and mission of the cohort. But more importantly, lived the cohort's values throughout the process, which were integrity, communication, decisiveness, and empowerment. This experience became our personal journey together as a team, and one we can lead industry through for any other pandemics that might crop up or crisis situations. In relation to our initial misperception project, we now have the opportunity to add value to an FRDC potential project that started with understanding and shaping collaboration within fishing and aquaculture, and participate as the reference group, providing our concepts, research discussions, findings, and personal learnings into it. This FRDC project has very recently been approved, and it too has evolved into Project 2021-49, developing and testing a cultural change process in the New South Wales wild harvest sector, a case study to facilitate a process towards co-management in New South Wales northern fish trawl. This would be a great experience to link our story to the industry story. Now, moving forward, the Strategy 2 team is an extension to our project in terms of how to communicate and interact with industry by utilising stories, podcasts, social media, and more, which Darcy will now step you through.
Thanks, Megan. Can everyone see the screen? Hi again, everyone. Thank you for taking the time for being here today. As I mentioned before, I'm Darcy Wallace from the Australian Fisheries Management Authority and a member of Strategy Group 2, which aim to tell the stories of the Australian seafood industry. Before handing over to the other members of my group, I just wanted to give you an overview of the group's journey and the evolution of our project since March 2022. We all started in March 2020, all keen, fresh-faced, and with no idea what a lockdown was. Our initial project aimed to tell the stories of the seafood industry, putting a face to the fish, so the broader community understood and got to know the primary producers and what makes them tick. Our initial idea was to tell the stories of the sector through video or audio interviews with social media and podcasts as the key platforms. After an initial flurry of activity with interviews conducted after our first residential, the impacts of COVID, including limited travel, halted this, along with the significant uncertainty with the future of our program. We met again in May 2021 in the Gold Coast and reassessed our vision and mission and strategy groups to incorporate our experiences from the COVID pandemic. At this point, our project evolved to telling the stories of the industry throughout COVID, including the impacts and how they'd adapted to the new challenges. The goal at this point was to create a patchwork quilt of stories from the industry titled Rough Seas, told through Facebook, Instagram accounts, along with a podcast channel. And I'll now hand over to Ant Tennant, who will talk to you about his journey and experiences conducting the interviews.
Thanks, Darcy. My name is Anthony Tennant. As part of my NSILP 2020 project, my mission was to carry out interviews from within the industry. Some of these interviews were taken on the cusp of COVID-19 lockdowns that we all endured. What I discovered was becoming a common trend, these being changes that were needed within their businesses and the need to diversify, to chase new markets, both overseas and in our backyard. Their resilience not to give up was inspiring. The uncertain weather and changing of the tides were only a splash in the ocean to those who have and still are affected from COVID-19 and changing markets that we currently face. Cray fishermen wondering and pondering their next move. Brokers fielding calls from fishermen asking for direction in uncertain times. Fifth generation fishermen anchor out for the long haul of what's to come. Abalone divers that heavily invest in their local communities. Line fishermen finding new ways to markets. All aboard and loving their product they catch and prepared to ride the wave of uncertainty. The determination to update their vessels to meet customer health requirements. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my project, Glenn Jager, Rob Pender, Paul Jager, Scott Tyson, Bob Lamerson, Chris Bailey, and Jerry Vander. My story, my journey, COVID-19. Whilst we endure rough seas, the thought of the unknown touched so many. We all managed to turn the corner at some point in time and to face new challenges. Whilst our marine mechanical business saw extreme growth throughout COVID, our commitment in our fishing side was in trouble. It was time to walk forward and not stand still. A family meeting with my wife and kids had taken place, and a discussion was made to diversify our company. The trucks rolled in one by one. The slab was laid, and the foundations were set. The door to new beginnings were upon us. With great excitement, the switch was flipped. The flight had landed. The tanks showed life. The wife even had a smile. Millie was in her element, and Brinley, the captain, just loves it. These are the next generation of fishers that no doubt will endure the rough seas as part of challenges that we face within our industry and life in general. May the seas be kind to all. I will now pass you over to Daniel for his insight to podcast.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Chen. I'm from Geraldton Fishermen's Co-op. And before I give my presentation today, I would like to really ask a few simple questions to our audience. Have you ever considered how did Adolf Hitler spark a war? Have you ever considered how Winston Churchill lead his people to defend his country? Have you ever considered how Martin Luther King and Malala Yousafzai created a movement of her times? One of the biggest lessons I've taken from this leadership program is this profound realization that the world that we are living in today is shaped by the voice of the leaders. Just like how Adolf Hitler sparked or manipulated the young Germans to invade other countries. Just like how Winston Churchill has spoke motivational words to stir up the young British people to stand up for themselves and fight for their country. And just like Malala Yousafzai, at her age of only 16, how she used her voice to stand up in front of the United Nations to deliver a speech and sparked a Malala movement. I also, as a future leader of our generation, I aspire that one day I can also use my own voice to stir up the hearts of many people and shape them into the right direction. Just like Anthony has shared, throughout this pandemic, there has been many people went through a lot of sufferings. That's why we actually have created the podcast that we say we're going to create. And we named this podcast The Rough Seas. The name came from the analogy of a desperate fisherman longing for the breaking of the dawn in the midst of a stormy rough sea. We aspire our program to be the lights that people see in the midst of their difficult situations. So we have created this platform to allow or to invite people within the seafood industry to come and tell us their resilient stories. Stories that will give hope. Stories that will soothe sorrows. Stories that will inspire some to overcome. And stories that will motivate us to take actions. Stories that will focus on taking care of the feelings of people. Because we believe a heart-moving person is an inspired person. And we believe a hopeful person is a resilient person. So over the next couple of minutes, we're going to present to you what we have done for our podcast.
The word that I pick up from the King Ramanai in Thailand, he already passed away quite a few years. He's always said that first you have to help yourself and get yourself in the position that you happy and survive comfortable. You don't have to be big, but you're happy about your position. Once you get yourself into the comfortable position, you can help your family. After you can help your family, then you can help your community as well and your country. So I'm now in Australia and I can help my family, some in Thailand, some in Australia here. And I'm looking at what is the next thing I can do for my community.
Welcome to the Rough Sea Podcast, a show about the everyday hidden heroes, telling their extraordinary stories. I'm your show host, Daniel Chen. And on the show today, how Lucina looking, the only female boss in a lucrative but traditionally male-dominated tuna farming industry. Inherited a debt-ridden business from her late husband and turned it into one of South Australia's most innovative companies. Lucina's success story had a winding journey. After a series of setbacks, including her husband's death, Lucina was diagnosed with severe depression. She was on the brink of collapsing before the mounting pressure and needed to rely on medication to go to sleep. But before any of that happened, Lucina obtained her education as an English teacher in Thailand. Her journey into the tuna farming industry began with a teacher's exchange program in Port Lincoln, a remote fishing town in South Australia.
I went to university graduate to be an English teacher. So I was an English teacher in Thailand for 8.5 years and came to Port Lincoln first time as an exchange teacher. And I was teaching in Port Lincoln Primary School. Because of the program, I can't stay the whole year in one place. So I moved to Port Pirie, teaching in Ridden Park Primary School. The last school was a Mercedes College in Adelaide. After finishing the teacher program, I went back to Thailand, teaching there another 1.5 years before I got married and come to Australia in 1997.
Thank you, Darcy, for playing that video for us. Now I would like to direct you to our next presenter, Sean Larby. He's going to present to us potentially what a live podcast will look like. Sean, the mic is yours.
Thanks, Daniel. As part of our Rough Seas podcast group, this is a live podcast. This episode is called Riding the Wave, and I'm doing a question-answer style. Question 1, who are you, where are you from, and what do you do? My name is Sean Larby. I'm from the east coast of Tasmania. I'm a fisherman and a surfer. The type of fishing I do is wild harvest fishing for Abilene sea urchins. I'm also a director on the Tasmanian Abilene Council and the treasurer and secretary of a Tasmanian Commercial Dive Association. What do you like about your job? What's not to like about my job, really, for me? I absolutely love harvest diving. It pits you directly against the elements, takes away the chance factor of other styles of fishing, allows your instincts to take over. When you're an Abilene diver, you're a tracker, a hunter, a predator and prey all at once. Don't look over your shoulder. It can be a lot like meditation, abalone diving. When you slip over the side of the boat, all of the outside noise is gone. It's just you and the elements. Yeah, some days I can go down and do a 3-hour drop, and I won't look at my dive computer once. If I know the area well, I'll know how deep I am. I know what my catch rate is. I'll know where the abalone are holding on the reef that day. And 3 hours later, I can come back up to the surface, and it will feel like 15 minutes has gone by. So it's really, yeah, my meditation. Question 3, what does resilience mean to your industry? Resilience means a real lot to the fishing industry. Every fisherman needs to be resilient. I think every long-term fisherman is pretty tough. Ab divers, we work out of boats from 5 to 8 meters long. Sometimes the weather can go bad. I've been genuinely scared for my vessel and my crew and my own life many times. I've had dinghies full of water off the southwest coast, overloaded boats nearly sinking. We've punched through large waves, ran out of air too many times to remember. I've harassed by seals, dived on offshore reefs miles out to sea. You know, any moment you could become a meal. So for my job, genuine fear is a part of it. You know, it's how you control that. And I think it's also a part of just about every fisherman's job. I mean, you can get stuck in a storm or something like that. And we all know we haven't got the best work health and safety record in the world. So disaster often looms close. And that's the easy part of the job. So that's once you're in the boat. Once we get back onto land, that's the hard part of it, the job for a lot of fishermen. You know, we've got to put up with quota cuts, rule changes, rules. Our rule book is, you know, it's around about that thick. And if you miss one page and it changes every year, you got to deal with processes, you got to deal with quota owners, you got to deal with AMSAR, the department, licensing, and the list just goes on. So, you know, resilience, you know, can be the actual physical part of a job and the mental part of a job when you get back onto land. Question 4, how has COVID affected your industry? So the abalone industry in Tassie, and I also do urchins, but especially the abalone industries, you know, it's over reliant on China. So as soon as COVID hit, there was instantly no more demand for abalone. All the restaurants closed and all the planes stopped flying. So our job ended the very next day, literally. But slowly, have I realised I still wanted a feed of abalone, I guess, and a few planes started flying out. There was emergency flights, you know, for export and things like that. So we were able to trickle them back out. It was a low quota year for abalone, so which is probably a good thing because we just got them caught in that calendar year. So the shipments were held up, and then there was the geopolitical tensions with COVID and China and everything else. So there's big issues there, and that's one of the biggest stories. And then there's you know, the impracticalities of having to have a COVID safety plan in a small boat, and just the general fear of everyone. That's about all I have time for today. However, if you're interested, there is more of my episode available on demand, but unlike the usual meaning of on demand, it means you would have to demand it from me. And I'm looking forward to your questions and getting to meet some of you later. And I'm going to hand you back to Darcy now. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sean. And thanks to Ant, Daniel and Sean for telling their stories. And I now just want to share with you a short clip of some of the video interviews that we conducted.
Okay, so my name is Robert Pender and I look after Saltwater Solutions, which is a brokering agency for the commercial fishermen, and I've been involved in the commercial fishing industry since 2000.
Bob Lemelson, I've been involved in the seafood industry for not quite 50 years. Started off in WA and now been the last over 30 years in Cairns.
The COVID's an example of the fact that our industry is ever changing.
I think so, yep.
It's not the biggest, but it's been one of the major ones.
And then it's just change on so many levels, change in the marketplace, change in the way you personally interact with the world. No longer can you jump on a plane and connect with customers or stakeholders or team members.
One of the big problems was every time there's a lockdown or something, the aeroplane stopped flying, there was no air freight. What we actually did was we cut down the amount of product we were producing, and we did a lot more trucking, but also because of COVID and factory-wise, we finished up with a lot more other species because everybody was in the same problem. So we had to also find markets for other species such as coral trout.
So we positioned this fishing cruise in advance. We've had to sort of pivot from that food service space into more retail.
Oh, no way! It's never going to be back to normal. Like crabbers are still dealing with the effects of the cessation of exports for lobsters, because crabbers price, the mud crab price is relative to the lobster price, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's not going to settle for ages. Then you got the coral trout thing, and like one says COVID and stuff like that, and obviously that's got a big impact, but there's other aspects of it. And now you've got a shortage of quota, so fishermen have to pay exorbitant prices for coral trout quota, and the prices aren't very good. Like, if the if the wholesalers were going to make $1 out of it, they wouldn't be able to afford to pay the prices they are doing now. So they're mixing, they're just buying redfish, and so there's a whole pact of raft of flow-on effects about this.
Our commitment must, for obvious reasons, continue to make sure that crews go to sea that are safe, that we're not in a position where you have an infection that wipes out the whole boat and you've got to come home. That would be exceedingly poor. I think some of the other possible impacts are around business travel, the on-again, off-again nature of this, and COVID generally has taught us how to live without being on an aeroplane so much.
I think eventually things will go back to before COVID, and I think seafood will actually benefit in the long term out of COVID. One of the other problems we've got is, even though we might be up and operating, there's other countries that have been facing lockdowns at their demand and prices, and particularly in the bigger tourist areas, their prices are very weak, very easy to flood markets.
Thanks again to all those that did interviews for our group, and to AFMA for providing the editing resources to support that project. This was our story up until late 2021. We learnt how much time, resources and skill goes into producing high quality videos and podcasts. And with the backdrop of COVID, we questioned how this will be sustainable after the program. In addition, the East Coast lockdowns had taken the toll on some of the group, and with two of our group needing to take a break from social media for mental health reasons, we started to reconsider if social media was the most appropriate platform to tell our stories. And I'll now hand over to Sal to talk about the final stage of our journey.
Thank you, Darcy. So to recap, we had great stories we wanted to share. Using social media seemed like an increasingly unviable mechanism for reaching those new audiences outside of our industry circle. Digital channels had provided a lifeline early in the pandemic as the world dramatically shifted. But almost 2 years into the pandemic, online fatigue had set in. marketing gurus reported the attention span of online audiences had shrunk further to approximately 8 seconds. Doom scrolling became a pandemic buzzword, and the Facebook paper's whistleblower testimony confirmed what many of us have experienced firsthand, that social media platforms thrive on fomenting anger and hate. We didn't want to spend the last few months of our NSILP journey thrashing around in the cesspool of social media. So we took a step back and reconsidered how we could tell these seafood stories through mechanisms which have resonated with people through the pandemic. Rather than competing for online audiences with ever diminishing attention spans, could we engage with audiences in spaces where they're happy to spend hours of time in experiences which bring them joy and hope during tough times? For example, we've captured David Carter's story through a traditional video storytelling lens. What other non-traditional ways could his story reach different audiences? How about a Lego model of Austral Fisheries' new Cape Arcona hybrid fishing vessel? Or a portrait of David Carter in the Archibald Prize? Or a strategy board game in which players work their way up from deckhand to try to become CEO of a fishing company? Similarly with Lucina Lucan, how about a 6-part prestige ABC drama series offering a fictionalized account of her life, The Baroness of Tuna? Or a children's storybook to inspire young girls and women to take on leadership roles? Or a cover story in a multidisciplinary intersectional journal about food, feminism, and inclusion? If instead of telling these stories through digital recordings, you could book unique Airbnb experiences in different ports around Australia and connect with some of the people Ant interviewed in real life for exclusive insights into the life of a professional fisher. Perhaps with the people we have interviewed for this project, we could break their stories down into elements which spark new ideas, new storytelling opportunities, connect with new audiences. So we brainstormed the out-of-the-box ideas, sense tested these ideas for which resonated the most, and explored which ideas we could realistically take forward. We settled on 2 ideas we have the passion and energy to pursue beyond the NSILP program. Number 1 is Daniel's podcast. He is very keen to pursue his newfound passion for podcasting, and the positive feedback that he's received today, I think, is going to give him another boost to continue down this path. He's seeking connections to be able to take a Seafood Stories podcast forward. And number 2 is the Lego model project. We have a roadmap for how to be able to put a Cape Arcona hybrid fishing vessel Lego kit into production and have the green light from Austral Fisheries to take this idea forward. We now need to engage a Lego master designer to build the model, submit it to Lego Ideas, and eventually garner 10,000 votes or 3,000 pre-orders from the Lego community for it to become an official Lego kit. We will be hitting you up for your vote when the project goes live, and just a heads up that this fishing vessel, commercial fishing vessel, has quadrupled in value since it was launched at the start of this year. So it's a very good investment if you want to get in on the ground floor. The seafood industry is very good at telling our stories through certain established channels, such as industry publications like Fish Magazine and specialist media like ABC Landline and Country Hour. We wanted to help take these stories out to new audiences. We brought passion to the project, but butted up against the limitations of pursuing our passion projects within our very limited spare time, pandemic fatigue, and minimal budget. We think NSILP has ultimately provided us with the opportunity to build connections and develop relationships with people across the seafood community who share our passions and who we can collaborate with to take new ideas forward. We may not have been able to reach a massive audience within the timeframe of this project. If we could share one message with the captive audience we have in the virtual room with us right now, it would be, rather than frantically pursuing a frenzy of activity while the world dramatically changes around us, may the pandemic give us the courage to pause, reflect, and then pursue bold new ideas. Before I hand over to Jamie McAllister to introduce our 3rd strategy, I'd like to again thank the people who shared their stories with us, shared their expertise to help edit these stories, and who shared advice which shaped this project. We truly appreciate your time and support. Now over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Sal. Can everyone see that, hopefully? Oh, hello, and thank you all for attending our strategy presentation working towards our 2020 NSILP vision and mission. My name's Jamie McAllister, and my fellow group members are Luke Corbin and Cassie Pert. And our strategy is titled Getting an Appetite for Seafood, with that being the operative word. Now, our strategy starts with a bit of a story of where we've come from as a group and what we've experienced through our employment in various seafood sectors. Luke, Cassie and I come from diverse backgrounds in aquaculture, policy and science, and have therefore witnessed a broad range and use and uptake of digital technologies across our workplaces. Having observed how the uptake has influenced the way individuals and companies perform their day-to-day activities, it highlighted the potential digital technologies can occupy in fostering resilience and connecting our seafood sectors as part of our NSILP vision and mission. These personal experiences re-emphasised by our NSILP visit to the Gold Coast Fishermen's Co-op in 2021, where we witnessed a relatively primitive operation using a smartphone app to monitor the whereabouts of their fishing fleet, providing real-time updates on the ETA at the dock, and to the customers eagerly waiting for the arrival of today's freshly caught prawns. It clearly showed an initiative highlighted the embracement of digital technology to connect with their community and adapt to a new way of doing business in wake of the disruptions over the past couple of years. It therefore raised the question, how can we as a group better capture and share those digital experiences and demonstrate the potential for digital platforms to enhance communication, better connect and build resilience across seafood sectors around Australia? So from our experience and more broadly across our NSILP cohort, it would be fair to say there's been an increasing popularity and reliance on digital technologies among our sectors. And one area where this has clearly been apparent is the adoption of digital mobile applications, or as most of us know, apps, optimised to run on smart devices like your smartphone, your tablets, the watches, etc. Mobile apps are broadly used for disseminating information, such as fishers checking the forecast before heading out to sea, for communications and keeping in touch with colleagues, for citizen science and recording information, and in more recent times for compliance and monitoring workplace activities. Apps are therefore clearly versatile. In most cases, are being designed to provide benefits such as ease of access to information, workplace efficiencies, reducing the dreaded paperwork, and improving the way we communicate with one another. The list is endless. However, with the ever-increasing popularity of apps, there's an overwhelming level of choice and the information available which users must navigate. Consequently, the sheer volume of apps available, users are often unaware of apps that are out there, and the intended benefits or opportunities often go unrecognised due to the limited uptake and adoption of those apps. In simple terms, apps simply risk being lost amongst the cloud of information that is now available. Therefore, what apps are in existence or have been specifically designed for seafood sectors around Australia? Where are they located in the cloud of information? Can we unjumble the diversity of apps and simplify finding those seafood specific apps? In essence, can we improve awareness of various apps that are available to seafood communities that are used to better communicate and connect with one another as part of our vision and mission? So essentially, that was the first question that we sort of sought out to answer as part of our vision, as part of our strategy, sorry. But making an app easy to find is one thing. How are those apps being used among sectors? What can we learn from the users of those apps across the various seafood sectors to perform their activities? Can we highlight cases of leading by example and showcase how embracing an app can enhance or improve the way others in the sector can perform their activity or the way they do business? And thirdly, what makes a good seafood app? What works and what doesn't? What are the key attributes users are searching for when opting to embrace an app? Can we improve the way developers design apps or the ways in which we choose to use them? So with those key questions in mind, our strategy group set out to answer exactly that with 3 clear objectives: to improve awareness of various apps available to seafood communities, to highlight trends in the uptake of apps and how they're being used in seafood communities, and to identify the requirements of a successful seafood app for our seafood communities. I'll now hand over to Luke and he'll run you through how we went about answering those questions.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So our project kicked off on the Gold Coast during our second NSILP residential. We headed out into the community and had some honest conversations about all things seafood, starting with a beach cleanup to get the conversation started. Once back in our respective states, we headed out into the field and generated discussion across all sectors of the seafood industry. Our aim was to learn how different sectors were using apps, but along the way, we had already created awareness simply by sharing our stories. My favourite story was when I met with an old mentor. He'd been oyster farming for decades. He was still using the trusty old Tide Almanac book that had served him so well over the years. Downloaded the Willy Weather app on his newly purchased smartphone, which shows real-time tidal trends. And the phone quickly got shoved back in his pocket and he went back to his old book. It was at this point I realised an important leadership learning. Our aim was to raise awareness on apps available to the industry, not preach what I think is the better way to do it. It did remind me of an old saying in my industry though, and that's fish farmers don't mind change as long as nothing's different. However, not everyone we met was so faithful to the old paper books. For others, digital platforms have become a way of life and changed the way they do business. Commercial fishers were using apps to log their catch online, recreational fishers were using apps for constant weather updates, and seafood consumers were using apps to source sustainable seafood. And let's not forget how we've stayed connected over these past couple of years. Apps like Zoom or Teams. These were the apps that received the same feedback no matter the sector. Everyone is zoomed out. But where would we have been without them? For NSILP 2020 Port Lincoln cohort, our program would be a distant memory. A group of strangers sitting in a hotel room 2 years ago who have since become close friends and great leaders. I remember back in Residential 1, Jill had us write some key leadership qualities on a whiteboard. The word resilience was right at the top of the list. Safe to say for Team 2020, resilience comes in bucket loads. Due to COVID, meeting people in person became more and more challenging. So we created an online survey to reach the greater seafood community and gather information on what apps people were using and why. Cassie, Jamie and I met with FRDC to discuss the survey, and a link was published in the December edition of Fish magazine. Next, we compiled a comprehensive database with the key apps industry sectors we're using. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the QR code nowadays, so I'm going to ask you all to grab your phones and open up your camera. Once you scan the QR code, we'll take you to our interactive online database that we've built. For those of you who haven't quite mastered the QR magic, I'll drop a link into the chat and you can follow it on your PC. Just give everyone a minute to do that. So the database has a list of apps that can be filtered down by sector. The next phase of our project was to build awareness on our findings. Our story was published in this month's FRDC News and will be featured in the March edition of Fish magazine. I'll hand over to Cassie, who will share some outcomes of the project and where to next.
Thanks, Luke. So one of the key objectives for this project was determining trends in app uptake in the seafood community. For recreational fishers, there has been an explosion in app usage, with most apps tailored to this group. Social media apps are by far the most used app in the rec sector. But apps are also being used by rec fishers to improve safety on the water, with apps like SatSleeve turning a regular smartphone into a satellite device. There are also exciting new apps such as the Tacklebox app, which are making it easier for rec fishers to contribute to citizen science projects. In the commercial sector, apps are changing how some operations do business. With the creation of Microsoft Power Apps, businesses can now build their own apps tailored to their specific activities, which is exactly what companies like Tassal are doing to revolutionize their operations. Wild catch fishers are also moving towards digitized catch reporting, with more and more jurisdictions creating apps for direct catch reporting on fishers' smartphones. Our final objective was investigating what makes a good seafood app. Functionality and ease of use were overwhelmingly reported as key characteristics of a good app from the people we spoke to. For most people, the message was clear. An app must make their activities more efficient, allowing them to spend more time doing what they love, which is fishing. Many users also indicated that they're much more likely to engage with an app where the exchange of information is two ways. But beyond the characteristics of the app itself, a good seafood app is one that people are aware of and actually use. There are some great apps out there, but many are failing to meet their or to find their target audience because people are unaware of them. This really highlighted to the project group the importance of marketing, engagement, and extension activities when developing apps for the seafood community. Our experience over the last 2 years of NSILP has led to the following recommendations and thoughts on next steps for this project. We would love to see the expansion of our existing database to create a live one-stop shop online hub for the seafood community. This could be specific just to the seafood industry, or we could partner with an existing platform such as FarmTable, which is an existing online hub that aims to connect Australian primary producers to different resources, opportunities, and connect to one another. For app developers, we recommend development of a short guidance that provides developers with some recommendations around getting their app into the community, reducing duplication with existing products, and leveraging existing platforms. Importantly, we recommend that specific extension efforts must be integrated into the app development process to ensure we get the most benefit from the products being created. And finally, for early adopters of new technology in the industry, we would love to see industry demonstrate leadership in this space by sharing success stories within the community. This may need to be facilitated by groups like ourselves, FRDC, or an online hub, but could also certainly be achieved through word of mouth and industry events like Seafood Directions. So our commitment to continue this work past the final residential of NSILP, we will be seeking potential funding of about $10,000 to $20,000 to help expand our database and explore opportunities for creation of an online seafood industry hub. We would also love to work with the new FRDC extension officers when they come online to help spread the word about the benefits of smartphone apps amongst the seafood community. And we are committed to continue spreading awareness about available technologies and championing digital literacy within our own sectors and beyond. If COVID has taught us anything, it's the power of digital tools and platforms. We see smartphone apps as a significant opportunity for the seafood community in terms of connecting with others, making the way we fish or do business more efficient, and improving the fishing experience overall. By creating a database of what apps are currently out there, reaching out to the community to understand how they're using apps, and then sharing our story through mediums such as Fish Magazine, we have sought to improve awareness of which apps are currently out there and to ascertain what makes a successful seafood app. In doing so, we've hoped to help push the dial forward and encourage adoption of these new technologies amongst the seafood community. We see this project as a key way to foster connection within the industry and to help the seafood community that we love to thrive in this changing world of digitisation. Finally, I'd like to offer my sincere thanks on behalf of the group to Catherine Norwood at Cortex and the communications team at FRDC for publishing our story in Fish Magazine, to Al McGlashan, Ben Allen and Scott Gray for allowing us to profile them in the story, and to all the people who responded to our survey and shared their story with us over the last 2 years. Thank you, and back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Cass. And thanks to everybody in the groups for those awesome presentations. We're going to jump to some Q&A in just a moment, so I hope you have some questions ready. But first of all, I'm actually going to pass it back to Cassie to give us a summary of our vision and mission and our journey. Cheers, thanks.
Thanks, Nat. So first, congratulations to all the NSILP 2020 Port Lincoln cohort members. It's been a unique experience and there's been many challenges, but I think everyone will agree that we've learned a lot, made some great connections and did some outstanding work over the last 2 years. And Ant, I even got a little bit emotional when I saw your 2 girls in there all aboard with Australian Seafood t-shirts. So before we wrap up, I'd like to just give a quick summary of the group's work that's been shared with you this afternoon. Our cohort's vision is for a thriving Australian seafood community in a changing world. This vision was shaped by our experience during COVID-19, which greatly disrupted our NSILP journey and everyone's lives more broadly. To achieve this vision, our mission was fostering connection and resilience among Australian seafood communities, with a real focus on resilience given the COVID-19 experience. We had 3 different strategy groups that have spoken to you this afternoon that sought to achieve this mission. So one group looked at perceptions and misperceptions within and beyond the industry. One group focused on telling the stories of industry, including our own story, and our final group that explored the use of smartphone apps amongst the seafood community with a focus on connection and progression. We'd now love to get your feedback on our journey and answer some of your questions. So I'll hand back to Nat to kick off this part of the session.
And now for the fun part. I'm now going to hand it straight over to Anthony, and he's going to host the Q&A segment of this event.
Thanks, Nat. Thanks again for coming along on our journey, everyone. Just before we get started, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping items. First, if we can stay muted, please raise your hand function on the lower bar in reactions. I'll then call your name for you to direct a question to one of our cohort team members to respond. Please note, I will try my best for no one to miss out on question time. And the first one I'd like to hand over to would be Dave Carter, please.
Bruce. Oh, that's out of the blue, Ant. You got any killer tips for me?
Just wing it.
No, I think I've always loved these sessions, and to see you guys go on this journey, albeit this one's quite unique, is a special thrill. And I'm sure I share Patrick's view, but as we get a bit older, one of the things we get to relish, not that you're old, Patrick, is that chance to share the little bit we know with those that are willing to soak it all up. So that's terrific. As a question, I guess, comment first, the interesting observations around online fatigue, just the loss of attention span, then that shift into Lego. I thought that was really fascinating. So yes, the place is crowded, social media increasingly toxic. I'm not sure what if there's an easy answer there, but yeah, Lego boats were appealing. I suppose the other question broadly of the group, it is around this leadership piece, and we throw leadership around a bit, but I'd be keen if somebody could have a crack at actually defining leadership for me. No pressure.
I'll have a go. And leadership is stepping forward when someone asks you to define leadership. Leadership is being aware of what it is that you need to deliver, how you need to empower the people around you to help you deliver what you need to deliver it, being aware of why you're doing it and where you're going, and listening while also knowing when you need to forge ahead. That was off the top of my head anyway. Thanks.
That's cool. Any particular personal characteristics that you think might be present in leadership?
Me personally?
Yeah, but just general observations. I mean, you're the one put your head up. Good for you.
Integrity, listening, and empowering those around you, but also having a vision and being able to be strategic enough to know how to get there by bringing people along with you rather than forging ahead on your own. So they might get there before you.
Good work. What about Sally? I reckon Sally could have a view on leadership.
Thanks, David. I don't think there is a singular definition. I think leadership is embodied in different ways and different styles. And I think we see that across the group. Like there are some people who are very confident in stepping forward and taking the mic. And then there are some people like me who might still take a moment to pause. But you know, I think my leadership style is a bit like tapping people along from the side and bringing them along on the journey. So there's different ways that we can demonstrate leadership and many different leadership values that, you know, that we come with and that we have chosen to focus on and develop over the course of the last 724 days of this program.
And leadership is not just for the boss, right?
Correct.
Everybody has the opportunity, indeed the obligation to find their own voice, be their own leader, and even that includes organisations, the ability to manage up, call what's right, do those sorts of things.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dave. Patrick, I've seen Hone, I've seen you there typed in a little question down there. Would you like to fire one away?
Just to make it easy so you could read it before I asked it. Yeah, so I was just interested in, obviously I was fascinated by this journey, and obviously this is a particularly fascinating discussion we've had today because you've been over such a time span, and you talked about, normally when we hear about the NSILP journey, it's a relatively short window. Yours has been a genuinely long window. So I'm just interested in that word thriving, because thriving means a lot of things to different people. It could be making lots of money. It could be, healthy habitats. It could be lots of things. But did your definition of thriving change during the term, or did you relatively have a good idea about what you meant by thriving the whole way?
I'll have a crack at this one.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
No, you go.
Yeah. Yeah, look, Dave, I suppose the thriving part that hits home with me, it's for everyone. It's for the whole fishing community. It's for the communities that the fishermen provide to. It's the families of the community and the fisherman community. So we all want everyone to thrive. So that was my take on that.
I was just going to add, Patrick, you mentioned how it changed over time. I think when we started off, it was quite broad, and we were thinking about profitability and sustainability and social license, all those things. And I think mental health would have been part of that conversation as well. But over this 2 years, I think that's definitely been more of a focus for us as individuals, but as a NSILP cohort. How are we thriving as individuals, and what do we have left in the tank to give back to our communities as well? That's so important.
Okay, all right, I'll move on to the next one. Brad Milk, got your hand up there, mate, if you want to fire one away.
Yeah, thank you. Well done, firstly, for everyone. Just 2 points before I ask my question. I was impressed. The group one, they talked a lot about having to stop and take stock of where they're up to through the thing, and just from the leadership perspective, really important that you're continually reviewing where you've come from. So that was something I thought was really well put forward. the group's also mentioned collaboration with other industries. That's something else that, you know, I'm now the director of a horticulture business as well as working in the seafood industry. So the amount of learning there is across businesses and primary industries and stuff like that is still, there's a lot more in the future, I think. So that's really important ongoing. But my question for Group 2, Bob Lamison mentioned during the interview that he thinks seafood will benefit in the long run from the COVID. And I was just wanted to, that wasn't really touched on anywhere else. And I was just wondering if Group 2 had any impressions of that.
Yep, nice question there, Brad. Sorry, I might just run this one, seeing I actually interviewed him on that. Yeah, he was pretty adamant that that the seafood industry should come out of it on top. It won't be a short-term turnaround, but the public will start relying more on the sustainable fishing that people can actually get at the shops. They'll really focus on supporting the local fishermen, the fresh produce, knowing where it's come from. So it was a time for the fishermen to really connect with the local community. So selling from boats, for an example, you know, down home in Tassie, the lobsters were sold direct to the public, which is a rare occurrence. The red tape behind that was polished up to make that a little bit more easier for the sales to occur. So I think where Bob was running with that is that it's time to start putting out the produce and really get everyone on board with Australian seafood. I might just throw that in. Hope that is a sufficient answer. Okay, Andrew Sullivan, had you hand up there, mate, if you want to have a cracker.
Thanks, Ant, and thanks everybody for your time and efforts today. One of the things I picked up on some of the presentations was the theme around connections. All of you mentioned, I think, the connections you made within the program and within each other, which, you know, I think is probably, you know, one of the big things you get out of a program like this. So I think that's something special that you'll continue, no doubt. I guess my question is that, okay, outside of this program, what intentions have you made for yourselves or goals have you set to make connections outside of this program in the broader seafood industry, and how will you go about that? Who wants to have a crack? Nat?
Yeah, I don't mind to address that question.
Great, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Andrew, for asking that question. Well, I can only speak from a personal prospect. The way I see it, actually, a couple of things that I really taken out from this leadership program, apart from the voice from the leader, is the mentorship and also a training body. And well, in terms for me wise, and then I'll define what those two roles are. So just like if you have a gym training body, people tends to actually exercise more if they have a training partner. And likewise with the goals and the things that you try to achieve in life, you actually have a training body with you that will assist you to actually to look out to take care of the accountability side of the things. And the mentor is there to set example before you and allow you to see that someone before you has already done it, and he or she doesn't mind to show you the way how they have done it. And I think that will paint a path for you to actually achieve the goal in your life.
Thanks, Daniel. Wes, you've got your hand up there, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Ant. G'day, everybody. First of all, thanks very much for all the presentations this afternoon. This is only the second one of these that I've participated in, and the first one, you know, was a very kind of jovial occasion, and it had been a great little process that people had gone through, and they'd spent plenty of time together, and you know, learned a lot, of course, but had a good time. Whereas what you've all described is certainly quite a journey that you've been through, and quite a bit of adversity. So I just wanted to congratulate you for coming through it and share a bit of an observation that, in my view, adversity either breaks or makes leaders. And so the fact that you've been on a leadership journey through a difficult time will hopefully bring you out as better leaders in the end. My question was actually going to be quite similar to Sully's, so I'll ask a slightly different one. One of your elements was talking about perceptions and misperceptions in the seafood industry and focusing on different ways to address that, and all three groups touched on it. I was just wondering how much thought any of the groups put into whose job is it to moderate the information that's being put forward. As I say, it touched on all groups. It struck me with the one-stop shop of fisheries apps. Whose job is it to make those difficult leadership calls of, this is a good one to put in, this one's not sufficiently reliable enough or accurate enough, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, just wondering whether there's any thoughts or observations about how those decisions can be made about moderating the perceptions and misperceptions that are put out.
Thanks, Wes. I'm going to fire over to Kim Hooper, who has put up a good question there. Would you like to fire that one away, please, Kim?
Sure. I think just to start with, though, what Wes is saying, there's a question is very, very valid. So we spend some time on that as well. But my question, I mean, what you've all experienced and touched through these last couple of years and through your presentations is something that has been felt throughout all of the seafood industry and the supply chain and businesses. And I know for my farms, on the prawn farms, and shortages of salt and feed and supply ships taking 8 months to come through, etc., or sitting off the coast. So what learnings or advice would you give as leaders now to the broader seafood community in relation to those struggles?
Thanks for that question, Kim. I think, yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I think I'll probably ask a little bit from a personal standpoint about the things that I look to actually help me through the very difficult, last couple of years that we've all experienced. I think making sure that you've got your personal support networks in place, having that support at home or through, through friends or family or other connections, because I think that if you've got people having your back, I think the mental health stuff, it doesn't go away, but it definitely, helps share that load and, and makes you feel less alone. My experience of this program is how many amazing people with great ideas are out there, and actually just reaching out to people and thinking, to get advice and learnings from others, because I do think we have such a wealth of knowledge, and people experiencing similar issues in different industries, but working together can help, solve, essentially mutually beneficial problems, even if the industries actually are different. And I think maybe don't be afraid to take sales advice, and don't be afraid to try something bold and new, because I think at this point, I know there's a lot of challenges, but I think that thinking outside the box has definitely got, industry through, a lot of challenges in this hard time. And I think that, that would be my advice moving forward.
Can I just add to that, Darcy? So, Kim, one thing I noticed when I got out into the seafood community is that operationally, and I'm talking commercial sector here, operationally, companies are still performing very well. They're getting good returns in growth or stock or catch rates, but it's not showing in the financial results because of the supply chain issues that you mentioned. So my advice to seafood leaders is transparency, and not within their own workforce, and not transparency in the high level PR stuff that we put out there, but actual raw conversations about challenges companies face.
Very good. Thanks, Luke.
And just before we jump back, I was just going to respond with Wes's question, if that's okay.
Yeah, far away. Sorry, Wes.
So heading back into the perceptions, misperceptions, and, you know, moving forward, how do we deal with that? I think a great example of a current issue, and I'm going to mention, is tassal with the salmon industry in Tasmania is probably a really big one. And we actually had a good conversation about it as leaders with how do you deal with something that's so front of mind. Obviously, an election year does help support some of the lobbying that's happened. But I suppose, in short, is that I think we've got a long way to go. We hotspot issues that come up. I think in terms of, say, the Australian prawn guys, they had to hotspot perceptions around the eye ablation and some of the kickbacks from that. And we do talk about collaboration, and having one point of call, which you know, where does that even sit? You would think that having SIA as the industry association would be the best place for it to sit. But generally what happens is we all end up providing that information across various platforms in our various ways. And we either have not enough, the misperceptions, or too much information that it becomes overwhelming and we stop taking in what exactly it is, and then it becomes a too hard basket. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. Wes, does that sort of answer a little bit around what you were asking?
Yeah, it does. Thanks very much, Megan. And it's an unfair question. And I was asking it because I was hoping someone had a great idea. It's a struggle that we constantly come up with. And there are some really notable success stories where sectors have been able to get together to reduce conflict, to put consistent messages out and to support each other. But they're notable by virtue of the fact they don't happen very often. And so we've got this continual challenge about how to progress it.
I think there's a lot of things coming through the pipeline. And there might be some stuff coming through even wiser, the Women in Seafood. Kirsten Abernathy, I think, is doing some research around, or starting to pull some information to get some projects off the ground. So I think this is a watch this space, how we head forward. And a key word that we've heard, and it goes through our projects, is that collaboration. It's very hard because going back to, I think even Sam Gordon yesterday spoke to us about, we like the word, but actually we're too busy sometimes competing with each other to find our ground, or even just the financial, that we forget that we've lost sight of the bigger picture, because competing against each other is not how we come out. And some of the prawn industry sounded like it was a good case study in terms that they were competing against each other until they set a set price, and they were able to do that. But it doesn't happen overnight. You're talking about, you know, change management on top of collaboration, and we're very competitive in the industry. And unfortunately, sometimes we only see within our own business and not what it's doing to the rest as a whole, whether it's just our sector or the bigger industry in itself.
Okay, nice one. Catherine, been patiently waiting there for a while with your hand up.
Oh, no, that's all good. It's a virtual hand. So, look, I think really to everyone, congratulations. It has been such a delight and a pleasure to hear your stories and to see your presentations. And I think you've done a terrific job for an online presentation for this course. It is just as magical as it is in person. And I'm getting a bit emotional because it makes me so proud to be in this industry because of people like you and the ideas that we have to collectively keep us all going, because we do have some tremendous challenges. But just massive congratulations for all of you for making it through the end and for coming up with some really creative and inspiring ideas. I can see Jules shouting out to our previous graduates. I did this course in 2007, which makes me feel like a dinosaur, but I remember this day that you're all going through as fresh as if it was last week. And I can remember sitting there thinking, I had this idea and I thought, oh, should I share it with this group? Can we do something from here? Is this a silly idea or not? So my question to you, and what I loved about the NSILP course, is I think wherever you are in your journey, you learn and you take something for you that you need in your journey. It's not the same. Everyone's different. You get your really confident people, your shy people, and everything in between. But it also helps you like reflect and have ideas. And what I want to ask you is, have any of you had an idea that you haven't yet said out loud to someone because this course is sort of prompting your thinking and you think, oh, maybe I could do this, or maybe I might do this after the course? Is anyone willing to share that little thought of something that's just eating away at you? Is why haven't we done this, or why hasn't someone done this yet, that you're thinking you might put into action? Because I got brave enough to share that idea on this day for me back in 2007 and went on to actually do it. And if I didn't say it on this day, I don't reckon I would have done it. So I'd love to give that opportunity to help plant the seed for someone's little idea.
Oh, well, I'll go, Catherine. I are looking at some more research areas, and it even ties back into Wes's collaboration and communication piece. I'm actually thinking about talking to the various people that we've spoken to and some of the universities to try and get a particular project off the ground or integrate into what might already be coming to start solving what Wes has been talking about, but giving a platform to have, you know, programs about how we communicate, what is the best way and across the various sectors to get that better interaction, because we try, but we're not overly great at it.
Okay, we'll go over to you, Joe. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, first of all, I'd just like to congratulate everyone once again. It's just unbelievable to see the resilience that the whole team has had for such a long journey. Bear in mind that this is only the beginning of your journey, and you guys are the future leaders in change. In respect to that, I can't go past saying that keyword resilience and connection, because the three of your strategies are really in connection with each other. And I compliment you on the whole group being able to put that in a way that they do connect. In regards to that, in resilience, I will ask one of the team members to actually explain what their key resilience point was to get them to this point, and what they can take in the future to help others or in the industry to take them forward. What was that key resilience that got them to that line? All of us have had journeys, whether it's out at sea, whether it's fishing, or whether it's personal stories. My story was the day I had to come and start this leadership course, and we were hit with Cyclone Larry, and that was quite a trauma for me to leave my family at that particular time. This is nothing compared to what you guys have gone through. And I would just also like to add to that is listening to the stories in the podcast. Now, I've made some new titles for you guys, and I'd love to hear them one day. And so one of the podcasts can be Changing Times, because your leadership group, you are the key pin of changing tides. And then also the tide has changed. And that is your future stories of the tides that you have changed in respect to that. So congratulations once again. And I would like to hear from one of you, at least one of you, what was your key resilient piece that got you over the line to get you here and to finish the program off? I know it's challenging.
I can have a go if no one else wants to. For me, Joe, it was the restarting at each residential. So we had such a big gap between. I think residential one for me was very taxing mentally. I don't think we knew what we were in for, and then you get to the end of it, and you guys who've been through the program would know what I'm talking about. You get to the end and your brain almost takes 3 weeks to process it. But then we kind of felt like we were on a road, you know, to this in this program. But then everything changed, and there was this huge gap where we did kind of forget about the program for a while. So then come residential 2, we had to start again. And then even the gap between residential 2 and 3 is so much has happened. So it's almost, you know, we almost had a restart on Tuesday, to be honest. So I think for me, that was the key piece of resilience that I really noticed, where we just picked up where we left off. And, you know, yeah, we did have to restart to a degree, but nothing really changed as a team. So, you know, Jill, I can't remember what the actual chart was, but it was something about teamwork, how you've got the storming stage and then working together. And something I really noticed every time we catch up after might be 6 months, we walk into a room and it just works. Everyone reads each other really well. And yeah, I think we work really well as a team together.
Thank you for that, Luke. And I suppose in one way, another thing that resonates to me is, as the facilitators have done for you guys as much as they can, as to the best of their ability as they can, is the quote, "We've got your back." And so they're the people that really made sure that, you know, if you really wanted to continue on, they had your back. So congratulations to the facilitators as well, and all the mentors, etc., who have assisted you to put their hand up forward to get your projects off.
Thanks, Joe. Darcy, have you got a question there?
Not a question. I just also wanted to respond to Joe's really great question about the resilience of the group. I think for me, my moment was probably sometime last year thinking, how on earth are we going to bring this home? Like, what's going to happen? I'd come out of a 3 or 4 month lockdown in the ACT. I'd had my 3-year-old home for a significant portion of that time, which was obviously, you know, as any parent in this Zoom would know, excruciatingly challenging at different points. And, you know, the working from home, feeling disconnected, I just sort of thought, I don't know if I can do this. And I think for me, it was actually an email that that Sal sent to our group afterwards. She'd had some amazing ideas and rethought and, you know, been a little bit more productive on her holiday in terms of this program than I had. But I think that was the thing I needed to go, no, we can do this. Like, I just needed that someone else to actually sort of provide that kind of encouragement and sort of like lift you, you know, sort of like lift you up again to get motivated.
Thanks for sharing that, Darcy. Really appreciate it.
I can be really cheeky and interrupt there. I think, Darcy, that's a really important thing. Sometimes you're providing leadership when you don't even know it. So by sharing your ideas and keeping that enthusiasm going, whereas if Sal perhaps had given up, then you might have also not be here today. So don't forget that is so powerful, your influence on others, even when you're not intending it. Sal probably didn't mean to demonstrate leadership in that moment, but she actually did. So yeah.
Sorry, may I just add a comment on the question? I think what really got me here is, I think for one thing, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone, is the support that this group actually gave, and especially our instructors, the 2 instructors. You know, you just feel like every time you call them, they are available, they are ready to talk to you. And I recall that I asked a question 6 months ago, asking for some direction about mentoring. And 6 months later, they still remember and they have fulfilled their promise. So I think that for me, that really meant such an instructor who cares. And also just a shout to my team members there. And also to share a bit of journey about this podcast editing. You know, at the start of the project, I heard this saying, I believe it was from Darcy. They say every minute of podcasting editing takes an hour. And I can certainly testify it wasn't an understatement. So the podcast, the original podcast was actually an hour and 20 minutes. So I've cut it down to about 40 minutes. So I won't go into the detail of the math to work it out how long it took. And I recall that there was definitely moments throughout this training program that I've been thinking, oh, I need to, I can't take it anymore. I want to quit. But I think what really pushes me on is the desire to complete the program because of the vision I see. And another thing that really drove me is really that commitment to be accountable of what you say you will do, and also a reminder from the instructors whenever you're going through an uncomfortable position, it means that you're actually making the right progress. So those things have kept me going.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate your comments on that as well.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, is there any other questions anyone would like to ask first, preferably? Okay, well, we might wrap this up. So on behalf of NSILP Port Lincoln 2020 cohort, thank you all for your outstanding questions, and apologies if I had missed anyone. I'll now hand you back over to Nat.
Thank you, Anthony. Wonderful. Firstly, I just wanted to let you all know that Jill has informed me that this is the largest real-time online audience NSILP has drawn for over 18 years. So with that, I really want to thank you all for attending. Thank you again to Austral for sponsoring, and to FRDC for funding this wonderful program. And last but certainly not least, and I cannot mean this more, this is a huge thank you to Jill, Heidi and Virginia for everything you have done for us for the last 2 years and sticking with us through that time. I'd also like to quickly just reiterate that anyone who wants a copy of the recording, it's going to be made available through the Facebook page, Effectus Facebook page on Monday. And if any of you would like to contact any of us, our contact information is on the profile page. Effectus team sent around to you prior to this event. If it was so wonderful for all of you to be here. I know some of you will be with us at our graduation tonight, so we look forward to speaking to you then. Other than that, we wish you all a very good evening. Thanks.